Hello everyone, welcome. I hope you're all doing well. So let's learn something new in French. We've been working with regular IR verbs in the present tense in French. And in this lesson we are going to look at the verb réfléchir. Réfléchir. Réfléchir means to think. In this sense, to think a lot, to reflect, or to ponder. There is another verb to think, penser, which is just very general. It's the verb which means to think in a general sense. So what's the difference between réfléchir and penser? So I just cut and paste this directly from an AI search. If you just type in penser versus réfléchir, this is what came up. I've edited a little bit, took out some extra things, but the basic idea is here. So penser and réfléchir both translate to think in English, but they're used in different contexts and can have distinct meanings. So first of all, penser is the verb generally used to express an opinion, belief, or a thought process about something. For example, I think you are right. Je pense que tu as raison. I think you are right. Réfléchir, on the other hand, is used to mean reflect. In other words, to contemplate something deeply. So it implies the more deliberate and thorough thought process. So you're going to think about something, to mull it over, to reflect. So for example, here, to deliberate on a decision, je dois réfléchir avant de prendre une décision, which means I need to think it over before making a decision. So again, it involves a deeper thought process. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a basic idea of the differences between penser and réfléchir. So let's look at the IR verb endings. So again, this is kind of a quiz for you. Can you tell me the ending before I show it to you? You have to memorize these IR verb endings. Native speakers have to do the same. There's no way around it. So do you know what is the ending for je? For regular IR verbs in the present tense, the ending is I-S-E. If your subject is tu, the ending is also I-S. Il, elle, or on, I. Nous, ils sont, vous, issez, and il or elle, is. So remember, if you want to conjugate the verb réfléchir in the present tense, the first thing to do is remove the IR ending, and you're left with the root or the stem. And the only thing that you have to do at this point is add your endings to the root according to the subject pronoun. So let's practice. If my subject is je, I start with my root, and then I add the ending. What's the ending that goes with je? We just looked at it. It's is. So I think is je réfléchis. Je réfléchis. Remember, this is think, like thinking something over. You think, tu. Here's my root, and I add the ending. Réfléchis. Tu réfléchis. You think. Il, elle, or on. There's the root, and add your ending to the root, which is it in this case. So, il réfléchit, he thinks. Elle réfléchit, she thinks. On réfléchit, one thinks. People think. They think. Remember also, this can mean we think. Nous. We have our root, and add the ending. Nous réfléchissons, réfléchissons, nous réfléchissons, we think. Vous, we have our root, and add the ending. Issez, vous réfléchissez, vous réfléchissez, you think. Il or elle, start with the root, and then add the ending. Is, ils réfléchissent, ils réfléchissent. They think. If you're referring only to a group of females, elles réfléchissent. Elles réfléchissent. They think. And of course, remember always that a verb conjugated in the present tense can have more than one meaning. So, for example, je réfléchis can mean I think or I reflect. I do think, I do reflect. I am thinking, I am reflecting, just depending on the context of your conversation. And of course, that goes for any of the other forms. They all have three meanings. When you want to say that you think about something in particular, we use the preposition à before we say the noun, whatever it is that we're thinking about. So for example, if you ask me a question and I have to think deeply about the question before I give you an answer, if I want to say in French, I'm thinking about the question, I would say, je réfléchis à la question. Je réfléchis à la question. I'm thinking about the question, or I think about the question. Another example, ce problème, this problem. So maybe we have some kind of a problem, and I'm thinking about this problem. I would say in French, je réfléchis à ce problème. Je réfléchis à ce problème. I'm thinking about this problem. Or maybe I'm specifically thinking about a solution to the problem, la solution. So if I want to say I'm thinking about the solution, whatever the solution might be, je réfléchis à la solution. Je réfléchis à la solution. So remember, if you want to say something like you're just thinking deeply, you're pondering, you're reflecting, you're mulling something over, all you have to do is just say je réfléchis. But if you want to say you're thinking about something in particular, remember to include the à before the noun. One other very important thing to be aware of is the following. When a masculine noun follows the à, it contracts to o. So for example, the word problem is le problème. It's a masculine noun. If I want to say I'm thinking about the problem, the a and the le contract to o. So I would say je réfléchis au problème. If we're talking about a plural noun, for example, les conséquences, the consequences, the a contracts with the les to become AUXO. So if I wanted to say I'm thinking about the consequences, I would say je réfléchis aux conséquences. But these contractions are the topic for another lesson, but just be aware that you'll see O and then O, AUX as well. Let's finish up the lesson with some more guided practice here. Remember, practice makes perfect. To be fluent doesn't mean that you know everything that there is to know in the language. It means that what you say, what you have the ability to say, flows. So if you want to speak fluently, practice speaking as much as possible. So let's just practice here with réfléchir. Tu réfléchis. Tu réfléchis à la question. Tu réfléchis à la question. You're thinking about the question. Ce problème, this problem. You're thinking about this problem. Tu réfléchis à ce problème. Tu réfléchis à ce problème. La solution. Tu réfléchis à la solution. Tu réfléchis à la solution. Il réfléchit. He's thinking about. He's reflecting. Il réfléchit à la question. 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 Ce problème. Il réfléchit à ce problème. La solution. Il réfléchit à la solution. So she's thinking about. Elle réfléchit à. She's thinking about the question, the problem, the solution. Elle réfléchit à la question. Elle réfléchit à la question. Elle réfléchit à ce problème. Elle réfléchit à la solution. we think. Nous réfléchissons. 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 Nous réfléchissons à la question. Nous réfléchissons à ce problème. Nous réfléchissons à la solution. You're thinking about the question, you're thinking about the problem, you're thinking about the solution. Vous réfléchissez. Réfléchissez. Vous réfléchissez à la question. Vous réfléchissez à ce problème. Vous réfléchissez à la solution. They think, they're thinking. Ils réfléchissent à la question. Ils réfléchissent à la question. Ils réfléchissent à ce problème. Ils réfléchissent à la solution. Elles réfléchissent à la question. They're thinking about the question. They're thinking about this problem. Elles réfléchissent à ce problème. They're thinking about the solution. Elles réfléchissent à la solution. And there you have it, the verb réfléchir. If you found this helpful, I would appreciate it very much if you give it a like. To continue learning and go on to another lesson, click on the video that appears here on your screen. See you soon. À bientôt.